We made peace a symbol of ours. In the name of peace we gather here now. Oh Lord, please make these days of ours on this earth filled with
Peace Team, the solution for humanity.
peace. Nikah mubarak, zawajun mubarakun, an-nikahu min sunnati.
Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahunna. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I welcome all of you with Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace, mercy and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on all of you. Today, we are going to have a special session. The name of this session is Better Half or Better Half. And in this session, you are most welcome to ask any questions that are related to marriage, related to choosing a life partner, any question related to how to conduct a nikah, or any questions after marriage or how a married life goes on. In short, questions before you say I do, or before you say Kabul hai, or before you say that I accept it, and questions after you say I do, or after you say Kabul hai, or after you say I accept it, so that a person's married life is as per Quran and Sunnah. In short, today's question and session would be dealing with how to have a successful marriage, questions on wedlock or padlock. So if the marriage is successful, it's a wedlock. If it's not, becomes a padlock. So there are special sessions, and that is the reason, mashallah, we have got more sisters than gents, and we have more than 50 sisters and about 10 gents. So I have to do justice to both. We'd expect about 5-6 questions from the sisters and then 1 question from the brothers. So any question related to marriage, nikah, please don't ask general questions on fiqh and masail. Any question related to nikah, before nikah, choosing a life partner, after marriage, questions related to married life can be asked. Don't ask general questions on women's rights or men's rights. That can be dealt in another session. So brothers and sisters are most welcome to ask any questions on better half or better half, wedlock or padlock. Yes, you're most welcome.
My question is nikah compulsory in Islam?
Sister has the question that is nikah compulsory in Islam? Though normally in the nikah khutbah we say that nikah is sunnah of the Prophet. But since the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Nisa, chapter 4, number 3, that marry women of your choice. So based on this, and our beloved Prophet Muhammad said that anyone who does not marry is not of me. So according to me, nikah is compulsory. Though there are many scholars, or most of the scholars, who say that nikah is a sunnat muakkada, a very important sunnah, but I feel that nikah is a fard, unless you have a very valid reason where the fard can be avoided. Otherwise, generally, like how pork is haram, but if you are dying of hunger and pork is the only thing that can save you, for that time it becomes permissible. So according to me, I feel nikah under normal circumstances is a fard, and it's the duty of every man or a woman to get married. And our beloved Prophet Muhammad said, it's a hadith mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, volume number 7, in the book of Nikah, chapter number 3, hadith number 4. Our beloved Prophet said, O young people, whoever has the means to get married should get married. That means it's a commandment of the Prophet. So based on this hadith and the other hadith that whoever does not marry is not of me, based on this hadith I consider that nikah to be a fard. It is a fard on every man and woman. Hope that answers the question. Any other sister?
What is the Islamic criteria for selection of a husband or a wife?
As far as the criteria for selection of the husband and wife, the best answer I can give is the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, volume number 7, in the book of Nikaah, hadith number 5090, where our beloved Prophet said that when a person chooses a life partner, the person looks for 4 things. He looks for beauty, wealth, nobility, and virtue. And amongst these, the best is virtue. So normal human beings, when they select a life partner, whether a boy selects a girl to be a wife, or a girl selects a boy to be a husband, normally a person looks for 4 things. One is beauty, second is wealth, third is nobility, and fourth is virtue. And amongst them, the most important, the Prophet said, is virtue. That means if a person seeks a beautiful wife, or a girl seeks a handsome husband, so it's permissible. It's not haram. Similarly, if a lady seeks a very rich husband, or a boy seeks a very rich lady in marriage, it's permissible. Similarly, if a person seeks for a family to be married in a noble family, a boy looking after a noble girl from a noble family, and a girl looking for a boy who belongs to a noble family, it's permissible. But amongst all these, the last one, that is virtue, is the most important. A virtuous husband or wife, a virtuous spouse, is the most important out of all these 4 criteria. That means, if you have to compromise in any of these 4 criteria, you can compromise on the first 3, but not the last. If you can get a spouse who has all the 4 criteria, that is sone pe sohaga. It is the best. If you get a boy who is handsome, who is wealthy, belongs to a noble family, and very virtuous, alhamdulillah, go for it, don't lose him. Similarly, if a boy gets a very beautiful girl, and a very wealthy girl, belongs to a noble family, and very virtuous, alhamdulillah. But these things are normally very rare. It's like in a fairy tale, you're waiting for the Prince Charming or the Princess Charming. So don't be in a world where, if I want, unless I don't get, I'll not marry. So the time will never come. If you can get someone, it's possible, but it's not probable. The possibility is there, but the probability is very negligible. So if you have to compromise in the criteria, you can surely compromise in the first 3. But see to it that you don't compromise in the last criteria, that is virtue. Hope that answers the question, sister. Can we have the next question, please?
What procedure can be followed in selecting an Islamic life partner?
This is the question, that what procedure can be followed in selecting a life partner. The procedure, as was mentioned in the earlier question, that what is the criteria for selecting a life partner? As I said, that it is beauty, it is wealth, nobility, and virtue. On these 4 basic criteria, you have to try and select a life partner. The procedure can be that first you yourself to be convinced that the partner that you want to marry should be virtuous, and convince yourself first that for me virtue is more important than beauty or wealth or nobility. You get convinced, and then convey the message to your parents first. Convey the message to your parents, because the parents may have a different view. They may think, okay, I want a very handsome boy, and I want my girl to get married to a very wealthy boy. So first you get convinced first on the Quran and Sahih Hadith, and then convey that message to your parents and tell that, because they will be the closest to you who would be looking for a match for you. So convey that message so that it doesn't happen that they decide that this boy is good and he may not fit your criteria. So first convince your criteria that you have to your parents and convey the message to them, so that you and them are in the same wavelength. It should not be that their requirement is different, yours is different. And you should not feel shy about it. Finally, they are your parents, so convey it to them. And then you can convey that to the relatives and to your close friends, that I'm looking for a boy who's virtuous, who's Islamic, and let the message pass on amongst your close relatives and your close friends. First is your parents, then your relatives and friends, and the third would be you can approach any Islamic organizations who can help you find a match. Since you're not looking for someone who's wealthy, if you're looking for someone wealthy, then you have to go to the billionaire club, There's a millionaire club and a billionaire club. So if your criteria is well, then you have to go to the billionaire club and try and find one. If your criteria is handsome, or for the boy it's beautiful, then you have to go to the beauty contest and see who you want. Because the basic criteria is Islamic, so go to Islamic organizations. And you can give your resume, see to that your resume is also on the same line, giving your details, the basic details, height, complexion, etc. and your likes and dislikes. In that you can mention like to have a husband who's virtuous, etc. And see to it you can collect resume from Islamic organization, or if you know of any marriage bureau which is based on Islamic guidelines, that would be the best. That approach a marriage bureau which is based on Islamic guidelines. Unfortunately, majority of the so-called Muslim marriage bureaus also are more of cultural based rather than the criteria being Islamic. You know of many marriage bureaus run by non-Muslims, many marriage bureaus run by Muslims, but the criteria may not be based on Quran and Sunnah. Yet you can give your biodata there, it's no harm, but preferable to try and select a marriage bureau whose criteria of selection is based on Quran and Sahih Hadith. The first level is the parents, then your relatives, friends, the Islamic organizations. Furthermore, it can be possible that you can let the people know about your selection in Islamic magazines. Maybe local, maybe international Islamic magazines. Many of the Islamic magazines have a section on marriage. Wanted brides, wanted bridegrooms. You can even give in general papers like Times of India, no problem. You may never know, it may click. You can even use the internet, but using the internet you have to be careful. Many times it leads to deviation. So can use, but with the purview of the Islamic Sharia. And you yourself should prepare your own resume and give the criteria that you want. In your resume that I would prefer a husband who is Islamic, is virtuous, etc. If a boy is writing, okay, I want a girl who is virtuous, you can say beauty is the criteria but not of ultimate importance. Will not be the most important. You can write, not that you cannot write, if you want a beautiful girl. So in this way you make a resume, and this will help you in trying to find a right life partner. And then once, if you go for an interview, the list of questions already were discussed. The list of questions that you can ask. But see to it that when you conduct a preliminary round where you're going to select a life partner, see to it that it is Islamically done. That don't go and meet around to go and meet, maybe in a garden, or I'd like to meet you in a movie theater in the last row. See that done Islamically. Either you call the boy to your house or you go to the boy's house, no problem. But see to it that there is a mahram. So the girl should either have the father or the brother with her, and the boy should maybe have a mother or sister. So in the company of a mahram. And when questions are asked, if a mahram is there, it is preferable. I feel there is no problem in having a mahram if you are asking questions which are based on Quran and Sunnah. If you are asking questions otherwise, there may be problems. Or if you think it's a requirement that no, there may be certain personal question, no anyone else to know, which I don't think so it arises, then see to it that you speak in a hall which has doors which are open, and see to it that the distance between the two opposite sex is far enough, Islamic distance is maintained, and this way conducted, and then if it fits the criteria, then inshallah you can go ahead judging the pros and cons. Hope that answers the question, sister. Can we have a question from the gent side? I think we already had 4 or 5 from ladies. In the gents. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before you say I do, after you say I do? Before you say I do. You married or not married?
No, I'm not married.
MashaAllah. So before you say I do?
Yeah.
What would you suggest for the reverts to Islam? I mean, should they live with their parents, or maybe should they prefer a revert as well? So, I mean, could you just throw some light on this?
Well, that's the question that what is your suggestion for reverts, and I believe that Brother Shams is a revert. Alhamdulillah. What suggestion for a revert? That after marriage, He's not asking selecting the life partner. After marriage, should he stay with the parents who are non-Muslims, or should he shift outside, or should he marry a girl who is born in a Muslim family, or marry a revert? The best would be that convince your parents, make them Muslims and stay with your parents. The best. Fine. Secondly, depending upon how your parents are, how well they've accepted you. If they've accepted you well and you feel it can be a smooth sailing, then there is no harm in continuing staying with your parents even after marriage. Smooth sailing doesn't mean everything is green. Smooth sailing means taking a little problems. Well, if your parents are non-Muslims and after you marry, there will be problems. But if you think the problems are not much and which can be handled, then I feel there is no harm in trying and staying. And if it turns out to be difficult, then later on also you can shift. So I prefer giving it a try first, unless you are sure that it's difficult. My parents haven't accepted, then you can shift out and yet be good to your parents and take care of your parents. Because as a duty, as a son, you have to take care of your parents. Irrespective whether your parents become Muslim or not, you have to obey them as long as they don't go against Quran and Sunnah. So your duty as a son is there, and your Jannah is beneath the feet of your mother. Even if she is a non-Muslim, yet you have to follow her commandments. Only those which go against Quran Sunnah you can maybe disobey. But the other things, see to it that you love her more, etc. As far as, is it preferable to marry a revert? Or is it preferable to marry a Muslim girl who is already born in a Muslim family? Again, whoever is more virtuous of the two, you marry her. So you find a virtuous girl who is a revert, compared to a girl who is already born in a Muslim family, but following more of culture, not following Islam, then the virtuous girl is more important. But if you get a girl in a Muslim family, she is more virtuous and this girl is less virtuous, then better marry a girl who is born in a Muslim family. But if exactly both are on the same level, if you say everything is same, the beauty is same, the wealth is same, nobody is same, virtue is same, then which is better? Then I would say that out of the two, the better would be marry a girl who is born in a Muslim family. Because then there will be pressure from two sides. There will be pressure from your wife's side and from your side to handle the in-laws. So that will be maybe a little bit of a more burden. At least you get support from one side. But if the revert is very virtuous and very strong, high taqwa, then the other girl who is born in a Muslim family may get family support, but taqwa is not high, then better marry a girl who has high taqwa and is a revert. But generally, if both is same, I would prefer that, normally people think, oh, revert is better. Yes, it can be in some cases, but not always. Revert, so easily acceptable. But then many a time, many things may not be known which is known to a person who is born in a Muslim family, brought up in a Muslim family, and you may do things which are wrong and which is normally known by the Muslims because of regular action. And then the pressure from both the sides may be too difficult to handle. Or maybe so there are more chances of deviating from the truth. Not that you will, depend upon each one's taqwa. If taqwa is strong, nothing can shake. Taqwa and the iman is strong, nothing can shake. But if both are average, virtue, average, everything, so I would personally suggest that it's preferable that a revert marries a person who is born in a Muslim family. But again, virtue is more important criteria than only this. Let me answer the question. Any sisters have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I want to know what will comprise of an ideal Islamic nikah.
Sister asked the question that what would comprise of an ideal
Islamic nikah, yes.
Ideal Islamic nikah. If both the spouses are ideal Muslims, then inshallah the nikah also would be ideal. That's number one criteria. If both of them, they would be husband and wife, ideal Muslims, alhamdulillah, automatically the nikah will be ideal. But in terms of other things, our beloved Prophet ﷺ said that the best marriage is that in which the least expense is made. See to it that it's not extravagant. We are talking more about the function rather than, after selection of the husband and wife. See to it that the nikah ceremony you do, it should be Islamic. Most of the people are more involved in saying how glamorous it is, what food will I serve, what decoration will I do. And that is the reason they require at least few months or maybe a year to prepare. So see to it that the marriage is on Islamic guidelines. See to it is simple. And the Prophet said, the best marriage is that in which the least expense is made. Further, the Prophet also said that make nikah so simple that zina becomes difficult. Now, nikah has become so difficult and zina is so easy. Nikah means, mere paas kam as kam 5-10 lakh hona chahiye, 5-10 lakhs I should have. Maybe at least I have $50,000, then I can do the nikah, otherwise it's difficult. And zina, easy, few hundred rupees. So the Prophet said that make nikah so simple that zina becomes difficult. So see to it that the criteria of the nikah ceremony should not be glamour, should not be based on any un-Islamic activities. And when we have the nikah ceremony, see that the hijab is maintained. Normally in our Muslim society, unfortunately, normally we have a lot of intermingling of the sexes during nikah ceremony. Or they may do nikah in a masjid and then have a grand walima. Walima is one of the very important sunnah, that after the marriage takes place, preferably after consummating, walima is given, That's good, alhamdulillah, sunnah. But they want to do nikah simple. When nikah is simple, now walima is not mentioned, walima is grand. And then you have in a big ground, a lot of decoration, then you spend 50 lakhs, 1 crore, whatever it is. So as far as the nikah to be on the Islamic guidelines, see to it that besides the would-be husband and wife being Islamic, even the atmosphere is Islamic, there should not be intermingling of sexes when you have the reception. See to it that there is separate section for the ladies, separate for the gents. Some places have separate section for ladies, separate for gents, but the stage is common. It doesn't make sense. They have separate sections, the stage is common. You want to display a wife, I'm going to marry such a beautiful girl. Everyone comes and hello, Mubarak, so it is not Islamic at all. Hijab has to be maintained. So see to it that the hijab is maintained. The ladies looking at a wife, no problem. Gents looking at you, no problem. Gents looking at the gents, no problem. And see to it that some places you have segregation of sexes, different stage, but then you have waiters, gents waiters going in ladies section. So it's very important. See to it that the hijab is maintained correctly. And this can be discussed even when you're asking questions. My sister asks, what is the list of questions? I can ask her which level of interview, first, second or third. When the final stages, then you can go into the discussion also that how is the nikah going to take place, in Islamic guidelines, in everything. And see to it that the haram activities, like music is not played during nikah ceremony, there's not too much extravagance, not too much of glamour, it should be simple, nikah can be done very simple. See to it that the meher is fixed as per Islamic guidelines. And one thing that should be given importance to is that see to it that when people come, they, mashallah, the people who you call should get rather a dawah or a message that it is based on Islamic guidelines. And you inspire other people to follow such acts rather than our so-called culture. That a person, tries to click business deals. I'm a businessman, so I have to click business deals, I have to make it posh. Fine, if the person is really stinking rich and if he spends based on his wealth, it's acceptable. But see to it, he doesn't do haram things like music, intermingling of sexes, etc. That's very important. So there are just a few points that how a nikah ceremony can be conducted. And see to it that what is haram in Islam, all the harams, all the list is avoided. And try and do as much as things which are mustahab. Simplicity, instead of spending 10-20 lakhs, you can give that in charity, or you can use that money for earning the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah your life will be more successful. If you give it the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah has given you, so that thing would inshallah be a benefit for your married life to be conducted in a better way. Hope that answers the question, sister. Yes, you're most welcome.
Kindly guide us as far as the list of questions to be asked to the prospective groom or the bride is concerned.
As far as the list of questions to be asked to the prospective bride or bridegroom, I personally don't know of any list of questions mentioned in the Quran that has to be asked or the Hadith, but seeing the way the verses of the Quran and the Hadith, etc., a person can derive a list of questions that can be asked. And normally, people when they go for a matchmaking, the most important thing is the photograph. And most of them, they reject the prospective bride or bridegroom just by looking at the photograph. Unless a new technology comes where you can come to know the virtue by the photograph. Fine, there can be negative testing. For example, if you find that the girl is immodestly dressed up and reject her, not looking at the beauty at the immodesty, it's acceptable. Or similarly, if the girl sees a boy who is immodestly dressed up and and if she does, that's a different thing. But normally, the normal routine that we have in our society today when a bridegroom or a boy goes to select a bride, he asks, "Oh, khana pakane aata hai kya nahi? Do you know how to cook food or not? Can you cook biryani? And fine, you can take care of the children." These are normal questions which I wouldn't say are useless, but would not be in the top priority. If you have the top 10 or the top 20 or the top 50, I wouldn't put them in the top 10 or top 20. It is important, but it is low down the list. The most important, as I mentioned in my earlier answer, is to find out that the spouse you are going to marry, is he or she virtuous or not? So questions basically should be to find out whether the would-be spouse is virtuous or not. To find the other three criteria, beauty, wealth, nobility, is very easy. Virtue is very difficult. If you want to know she is beautiful or not, look at her and you come to know. It is subjective. Immediately within a few seconds you can decide whether she is beautiful or not. Very easy. You want to come to know how wealthy she is, how wealthy he is, you look at the bank balance, do a little inquiry, the property the person owns, little bit inquiry you have to do whether it's a fraud or not, is it on loan or does the person own it himself. But it's possible and very easy to find out, and less chances that you will be deceived as far as coming to know whether the person is wealthy or not. The third criteria, whether the person belongs to a noble family or not, you just look at the sajara or look at the family tree, who are the parents. It's easy, and the chance you will be right is close to 100, either 98 or 99%. Beauty, immediately you can decide. Wealth, also do a little survey. Nobility, 99% you can come to know, and then you can give marks. But as far as giving marks for a person to identify that the person is virtuous is very difficult. We had in our school days, in our college days, in the subject of science and chemistry, we had confirmatory test. We used to call CT. Confirmatory test means you do a test and you confirm that this element is potassium or it is sodium. Confirmatory test. And there's something like negative testing. Come to know this doesn't belong to this category. Negative testing. So in virtue, doing negative testing is very easy. We used to say that the person is not virtuous is very easy. For example, if a boy goes to select a girl, and if he's wearing a skirt and a mini, you can easily say she is not modest. Very easy. But if the girl is wearing hijab, you cannot say for sure that she is modest. So the negative testing in virtue is very easy. You come to know the boy is having alcohol, he is gambling, surely he is not virtuous. Easy. But if he is not having alcohol, you cannot say for sure that he is virtuous. So negative testing, if you find certain criteria in the spouse, in the girl or the boy you are going to marry, if you come to know these negative factors, you can easily put her in the bracket of not virtuous, if these criteria are formed. But some criteria per se, just by seeing one criteria as not being virtuous, you can't reject the girl or the boy altogether. If the criteria of virtuous is a very small negative factor, but you find out that the other factors are good and but natural, you can yet give it a chance or give it a thought. As far as the list of questions to be asked, in the first criteria you don't have to ask anything, you have to look and you'll come to know. And though there's a verse in the Quran, in Surah Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 30, hijab for the men, that said to the believing man that he should lower his gaze and guard his modesty. And next for the woman, in Surah Nur, chapter 24, verse number 31, that said to the believing woman that she should lower her gaze and guard her modesty. This criteria is relaxed when you're going to choose a life partner. So you can look at your would-be life partner by selecting a life partner. So the first criteria is very easy. Second, as I said, wealth, nobility. Wealth, nobility can easily be verified. Wealth can be checked up. The most difficult is the virtue. There are various questions you can ask, and depending upon the reply given by the prospective wife or husband, your next question may change. For example, if a girl is going to interview a boy, normally in our culture, not religion, culture, the boy can ask the would-be girl any question, top to bottom, left to right, no problem. But if a girl asks questions, means it is, और ये तो सही लड़की नहीं है. They asking me questions. That means ये तो बहुत outward है, as immodest, You have full right, the girl has full right to ask the question to the boy has full, but natural within the purview of the Islamic Sharia. But natural, but you can always, to see that you don't offend, let the boy ask the question first. So you can ask the boy, okay, what would you like to ask of me? So that it goes off, smoothly, not that he feels that you're extra modern. So to be modern is good, mashallah. Islam is a modern religion. But these are the concepts that we have in our society, in our culture. So it's preferable that you give the first chance to the boy to ask. And if the boy is comfortable, the boy can say, you can always say, let the girl ask first, no problem. But if a girl is there, they always give a chance. It's preferable, so that everything goes smoothly. And most of the questions, most of them, not all, can be the same. For example, the girl can ask the boy after the boy finishes, since it's a girl who asked a question, that what kind of a girl would you like to marry? Indirectly, you are trying to find out that the answer he gives, now you'll have to judge that what type of person is he. You may say, I want a very beautiful wife. Fine. Not too much positive, not too much negative also, but, I want a wife who's very educated. Fine. No problem. But does he put the criteria that I want a virtuous wife? If he doesn't put that criteria, he himself may not be that virtuous. One is asking a leading question, one is asking an indirect question to get the reply. And the list of questions can go to thousands. I don't want to end the show only giving the list of questions. But then you can ask the leading question that, would you mind marrying a girl who does not do hijab? Yes, I don't mind as long as she's beautiful. So come to know, okay, fine, this person is not virtuous. So now you're indirectly trying to judge the level of virtue of the would-be husband by asking indirect questions. This is one way. And you can carry on like, would you like to marry a girl who does not offer salah? Or later on you can ask direct questions also. So in this way, first to try and find out how virtuous is the would-be boy you want to marry or would-be girl that you want to marry. Similarly, if a boy has to ask a question to a girl, if he's starting, or the girl, her chance comes to ask a question, you can ask leading questions that to find out how much he practices. Don't take it for granted. Same question can be asked that what type of a spouse would you want? That's a very good question. It's a very easy way to come to know what is the view of the opposite person. If that girl is virtuous, she will give answers based on Quran and Sunnah. Then you can ask the question, how many times a day do you offer salah? Some will feel offended. Oh, asking on salah. Or you can say that, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you a leading question, but because I want a virtuous husband, I would like to be sure. And you can ask the question. He may say 5 times, he may say no, 4 times is regular and 1 time, sometimes I miss the Fajr Salah, whatever it is. Now while you're asking question, you should come to know that the person who's giving the answer, is he just answering for the sake of answering or are the answers a fact? Because if that person realizes that the opposite person, she's a beautiful girl, but she wants a virtuous husband, so he'll try to behave like being virtuous. No, I do 5 times padhta hu. Chhodta hi nahi. So you ask a simple question, that what time is the time for Fajr Salah? Don't ask Zohar Salah because Zohar Salah is the same throughout the year. Zohar Salah, when the sun is at the topmost part, of the same. So ask what is the time for Fajr Salah? Fajr Salah, Fajr Salah. Fine, a person may take a little time because but if he pulls the fast one, what time is the time for Maghrib? And when you ask, don't ask with too much of ego, ask with humility. I'm sorry, depending upon the nature of the person you're talking to, your question framing will change. Some people are very sensitive. What do you mean? You're asking me how many times I pray? This cannot be the first question, it can be in between, after you ask the other thing. So, you may ask simple, what is education? But these questions people don't mind. It's a general question. So first question, if you ask what is Salah, there may be a problem if the person is not very virtuous. Or he may be virtuous, but he may think that you doubt his taqwa. He may not be broad-minded. So normally you can ask, where have you got education from? Fine. There may be criteria that you may want to know how good his English is, how good the Urdu is. And these are criteria which may not come in virtue, but comes in compatibility. It is very important that you have a compatible spouse. So if you have option, a person who is virtuous and doesn't know English, and a person who is virtuous and knows English, in which language you're comfortable and you want to involve, so but natural, then you can judge that. So these, when you're asking general questions, that is education. And education is also important. What is education? Where you passed from? Which college you went to? Which subjects you took. So here when you're asking these, you are making him comfortable initially. Now while you make him comfortable, you are trying to find out the answer that is given. You are trying to judge how good the English is. You are trying to judge his level of education, which is also important. The education is not there in the 4 criteria mentioned by the Prophet, but you want to get compatible. Because not that an uneducated person can't get married, but if you are educated and you want someone of the similar level, it's permissible. So after you do the other checking of the education level, of the language, of the culture, which is important, but the main is virtue. So you can ask leading questions after knowing about Salah. Then, do you fast in the month of Ramadan? It's a leading question. Do you fast the complete month of Ramadan, or do you fast even the accessories, additional fast? Now, if you ask, do you fast Ramadan, what do you mean? How fast? So, do you only fast the full Ramadan, or do you keep the additional fast, or so that he doesn't feel offended? Based on the answer, even if he says he only fasts the month of Ramadan, sufficient, not that he has to keep the fast of Shawwal. If he keeps, alhamdulillah. In this way, you try and find out the pillars of Islam. Salah is there. Then Som is there. Zakat if required, you can ask. Have you performed Hajj? This question, no one will feel offended, but they can come to know. And very important is the Aqidah, the Tawheed part of it. Asking that, which school of thought you belong to? What do you think is the most important book in Islam? Trying to find out that the person going to marry, how much knowledge does he have about Islam? This Quran and Sunnah. And then you can ask leading questions to find out that is he involved in any innovation. He may be fasting, he may be praying, he may have gone for Hajj, he may be giving a zakat. But ask leading question to know whether is he involved in certain innovations. Because if he is involved in innovation, the first pillar, that's Tawheed, is very important. The person should not be involved in any form of shirk. Because shirk is the biggest sin in Islam. Allah says in Surah Nisa chapter 4, verse 48, and in Surah Nisa chapter 4, 116, that if Allah pleases, He may forgive any sin. But the sin of shirk, He will not forget. For anyone who does shirk, he stayed far away. Fine, no Muslim will ever do open shirk, but there may be other hidden shirk or lesser level. So in this way, you can ask leading questions about Aqidah, about the school of thought, and does it match with your view, or does it match with Quran and Sahih Hadith? So main leading question should be on virtue, and the answers should be based on whether Islam that they follow, is it on ritualism, on culture, or based on Quran and Sahih Hadith. Most of the answers that the would-be husband or wife, a girl or boy, or marry, the answer should be based on Quran and Sahih Hadith. You should also try to find out that is the person involved in any major sins or not. At least try and find out, if not all, the common major sins that are there. When you ask about Salah, Zakat, the first few are there. Don't ask him, have you committed murder or not? That's the second sin. So Zakir Naik said, so I have a list of questions. First is shirk, second is murder. Have you murdered anyone? So but natural, which is, you assume that he has not done. But then the other one you can ask that, hope you don't have any vices. I'm sorry, don't feel offended, but I would normally like to have a virtuous husband, so I want to be sure that the life partner I'm going to be with, does he have any vices like having alcohol, involved in drugs, does he smoke? And sometimes it's okay, I don't have vices except for smoking. Negative factor, but certain things can be, if the other factors are good. That doesn't mean any of the answer is no, that means finish. Person may say, I offer 4 times Salah. The morning Fajr sometimes I miss. That doesn't mean that he is completely disregarded. The person says, I only offer Jummah to Jummah. So this is a big query. Should you go ahead or not? So based on the replies, then you can keep on asking further. And depending on it, that ask other questions, that how much do you think is important to convey the message of Islam? To find out, is he proud to be a Muslim? And then appearance you can come to know that is the person keeping a beard or not. If the girl is looking for a would-be husband, and if the boy is looking for a would-be wife, he would observe whether hijab or not. But sometimes you have to be careful. Sometimes the girl, they may be doing strict hijab, but when you go to look at her, she may not do complete hijab thinking, that she wants to impress you. So she may come in front of you not doing the hijab which she normally does. She may wear maybe a dupatta, but the hair may be thin, and you may assume. So is this the normal way you dress when you go out? Then ask a leading question. Because the hijab can be relaxed, so she may do that. So you have to be careful when a boy is going to look at the girl. But the girl, when you look at a boy, can see whether he has a beard or not. It may not be the most important, but it is important whether the person is covering his head or not. Covering that is sunnah. Not that you reject a person because he doesn't cover the head. But if he covers, oh fine. But again, covering doesn't mean he's Islamic. You may get that half out of 100 on Islam, but that doesn't mean the other criteria, everything is there. There are many people who cover that, but they're far away from following the sunnah and hadith. So these days, sisters, the questions you can ask many questions. You can ask questions about the future. The girl, what she wants to do. Maybe if she wants to do dawah. So if your wife, don't say I, because you're just interviewing. If the girl you marry, if she wants to do dawah or go to an Islamic organization, at least 2 hours every day, would you allow? Don't say if I want to go, would you allow me? Because yet it hasn't taken place. So the girl that you marry, if she says that she wants to go 2 hours every day, would you allow her? Now when the stages are on the higher stage, everything is done and engagement, and then you can say that if after marriage, if I want to go, will you allow? No, that's fine because it's on a higher stage. So it depends whether it's the first meeting, second meeting or third meeting. And the questions can keep on. And you can ask other questions which you feel what you want to do. Certain things you realize that what are farais, you have to ask upfront. That would you like your wife doing hijab? He said, I wouldn't mind. Suppose the wife says she'll not do hijab. Will you agree? He says, I wouldn't mind. Then you know that what type of Islam that he believes in. So these leading questions should be asked, and the list can, I don't know, we can go on and on and on. But you should always know that what is your priority in life, that if you know that you're a da'i and you want a da'i, you have to ask him questions. That what's your profession? How much time do you spend in conveying the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or is he just a so-called average Muslim who prays 5 times a day, fast in the month of Ramadan, maybe he's gone for Hajj, doesn't smoke, doesn't have alcohol? Fine. But is there anything else? Is he involved in dawah? Is he involved in conveying the message? Is he proud to be a Muslim? Or is the person apologetic? Is he shy? What are his types of friends? So the questions, sister, the list can never end. We can keep on asking and trying to find out. Therefore, the TV can go on for a couple of hours. Maybe one session, can be a couple of sessions. There is no rule that you should have one meeting or what is the duration of that meeting. But natural as much as you can. But go prepared. Make a list of questions. You may forget. You may not have that memory. So note it down. Make a list. Then you can ask. Want to know his vices? Important. What you want to do. And would you like your wife to earn a living? To know what is his view? These questions. But natural, when you ask a question, see to it that you behave like a virtuous girl. And so after I do the important duties of house, not that fine, I want to go for dawah, means full day, 10 hours I'm doing dawah and I come home and relax, fine. You have to look after your home affairs also, that's important. So this was just in brief, sister, and the list can keep on continuing for endlessly.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My question is a Muslimah allowed to marry without a wali?
Is a Muslimah allowed to marry without a wali? Wali is a requirement for marriage to solemnize. It's a hadith of the beloved Prophet ﷺ. Yes, there can be occasion that who is preferable to be a wali may not be there. So you cannot marry without a witness. One of the criteria for a marriage to solemnize is 2 witnesses required minimum. And one of them is your wali. That's the different situation, that the best wali that can be is your father. So suppose your father expires, what do you mean? Won't you marry? I'm not getting personal, just general example. Won't you marry? Or maybe a situation, so what I've realized, that then you make a wali who's the closest to you. Or some reason that if he's abroad and he cannot come, he's gone abroad for work and he cannot come, then you can appoint your uncle, you can appoint your brother, whatever it is. But wali, a witness is required. Without witness, a marriage cannot solemnize. So a witness is required, and one happens to be your wali. That's one of the minimum requirements, besides the other thing that you accepting, the girl accepting, the boy accepting, the mayor, etc. Hope that answers the questions. Yes, sister, most welcome.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I wanted to continue with my earlier question, and I wanted to ask you that if a person has already fallen in love, even if the person is not following hijab, and because of that gets into it, but later on realizes his or her mistake, then how would a person convince the person who has fallen in love? What measures would you give to stay away from it and to maintain the hijab, and so that the person does not fall prey to his or her desires like staring and stuff like that?
Just to ask the question that if a person, being a teenager, that's what was the earlier question, has fallen in love, and because of some habits, maybe staring and intermingling, which now he has realized, so what advice can we give him so that he comes out of it? Now the question is, fallen in love, how much has he fallen is important. So first I'll do a survey, how much has he fallen? To what extent has he fallen? To which levels of Sharia has he fallen or she has fallen? So first I'll do that, and then I'll try and advise him. If it's just an infatuation which the person has broken certain rules of the hijab and little bit intermingling, little bit handshakes and all, little bit going out and all, that it's easier to get him out. But if he's fallen so deep to the bottom of the well that he had a relationship, then my advice will be different. Fine? Because the Quran also says in Surah Nur chapter 24, verse number 3, that adulterous woman should marry an adulterous man or an unbelieving man. For a zani, it's a zaniyat. And for a zaniyat, it's a zani. So based on this, my advice would be different, trying to find what extent is that, who's the girl, or the girl has fallen into boy, who's that boy, how well can they get along together, etc. So the advice would depend upon what level has the person fallen. If it's extreme level, I'll try and find and see to it that if he has improved or she has improved, and the other girlfriend or boyfriend, what level is he or she, and then try and counsel. And if both can come to the straight path, what they've done is wrong, that's no problem. If both are coming to the straight path and both have realized their mistake and they agree to follow Quran and Sunnah, I would say, okay, get married. Fine. So at least they're following the verse of the Quran, that both have committed that sin and both continue. But if it is that they have not gone to that deep level, then it is but natural. You say it's an infatuation, what it is wrong, stay away from it. And but natural, get him closer to the Islamic activities, ask him to read the Quran, ask him to see Islamic lectures. And but natural, one of the important thing is lowering the gaze. That whenever you're interacting with any opposite sex, if he or she is not the mahram, then you lower the gaze. This is very important. This is a very important factor, because if you have to talk with the opposite, lowering the gaze, then the chances of getting infatuated is less. But if you lower the gaze and meet every day for half an hour and talk, if it's a classmate, then also there's a problem. Lowering the gaze and talking, then the voice is sufficient to infatuate you. Same thing. So all these are things that should not meet the opposite sex unnecessarily. You know, where did you go? I went out, I went to Singapore for holiday. Oh, how was it? Very good. Which is the last movie you saw? These things you can speak. The girl can speak with the girlfriend. The boy can speak with the boyfriend. But opposite sex don't require at all. So these things which are not required, not a must to speak, should be avoided while speaking with the opposite sex. And when required, when certain thing is there, when you have to speak with lowering the gaze, whether it's a duty of performing or in college, etc. So in that time, lowering the gaze and speaking, this will prevent them from getting involved in these things. And the best is, if you're young, get married as early as possible. As I mentioned earlier, beloved Prophet ﷺ said, it's hadith of Sahih Bukhari, Volume number 7, in the book of Nikah, chapter number 3, hadith number 4, that, O young people, whoever has the means to get married should get married. For that will protect the modesty. So best is marrying early. If you marry early, it is good. There are less chances of deviating. And it's easier to be on the Quran and Sunnah. And there are many benefits. So marrying early is preferable. But again, that's the reason you try and find a life partner. And don't wait too long. I'm trying to find a good life partner now. And I'm only 20, now 21, 22, then you're 30. Then all your options that you had run down. So don't wait till 35, 40 and then you sit down to compromise. So earlier the better. When you realize after maybe a few months or a couple of years the market is what you want and not getting. So see to it that you take the decision fast. Don't be too late. Then your compromise will keep on getting so low. So then you're, oh, that person what I had is far 10 times better than what I got now. The person you rejected, thinking he's not virtuous, you know your virtuous definition. The one you marry is 10 times worse than him and has other problems, but then it is your choice. So that's very important, the decision that you take. Therefore, being in consultation with someone who's knowledgeable, someone who's experienced, someone who can guide you is very important in this case. Hope that answers the question, sister.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
My question is, can a wife insist on separate living quarters for herself and her children away from in-law, knowing that the parents are old and husband can't afford maintenance of two homes? Does he have to fulfill her demand?
Sister has a question that, is it permissible for a woman to ask her husband for separate lodging and boarding, a separate family, rather than staying with the parent-in-laws, knowing very well that he cannot afford it? It's totally wrong. It's putting the husband in difficulty and putting yourself in difficulty. So if you know that the husband can't afford and you put, fine, before marriage, no problem. Before you marry, you say, I'll marry you if you have a new home, I cannot stay, that's permissible. He won't marry you, you don't marry him, you can stay separately, no problem. Once you are married, then you put the condition that I want to stay separately, and he may be earning less. He has his duties to look after the family as well look after the parents. Because his Jannah is beneath the feet of his mother. So you want to take your husband out of his Jannah is wrong, sister. And especially knowing very well that he cannot afford it, so do you want him to throw parents out of the house? That means you're not a virtuous wife. So virtuous wife would never say that. So taking care of the parents indirectly also becomes the duty of the wife. Though they may not be your direct mother and father, but they are father-in-law and mother-in-law. Because you have to look after your husband, and one of the duties of your husband is to look after his parents, so it becomes indirect your duty. Indirect, it becomes your duty. Indirect. Since you are the Mohsena, you have to try and see to it that you don't create problems. But if he says you want to separate, he said, no problem, why do you require separate? If he says that there's so much difficulty, all staying together, so you have to solace him and say that this difficulty, no problem, at least this will take us to Jannah. If we stay separately, then I won't be able to serve your mother, you won't be able to serve your mother. So better we face some difficulties in this world so that we have a Jannah in the hereafter. That's a Mohsena. So I feel, yes, fine, if they're very well off and if they stay separately and he can look after the parents also, and saying that fine, because my parents are elderly, they would prefer staying separately and they don't mind, and you have a separate house, then it's fine. If that's the wish of the parents, or if it's easily done and yet he takes care of both, he can keep someone to take care, etc., that's permissible. But if it's difficult and if it's poor, going to get difficulties for you and your parents and all, then I feel it should not be done. Hope that answers the question.
Brother, if a non-Muslim girl marries a Muslim boy, is it compulsory for her to change her name after marriage?
If a non-Muslim girl marries a Muslim boy, unless she doesn't accept Islam, she cannot marry. If a non-Muslim,
after she accepts Islam, and she marries,
and then marries, does she have to change the name? It is not compulsory for her to change the name unless the name involves shirk. If the name involves shirk, like Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the name of one of the goddesses. If it involves shirk, she'll have to change it. If it does not involve shirk, it's not for to change, but it is preferable. It's preferable, especially in this age. Though at that time people never used to change the name. But here I feel it's a requirement, because if she's proud to be a Muslim, why should she not want people to know that she accepted Islam? So if she's only done for namesake, because of infatuation, then that she will not want to change. She doesn't want to show that yet she is a non-Muslim. So my advice in such case would be that it is preferable that she changes the name so that the people will not get a misunderstanding that she is yet a non-Muslim. But it's not a fard to change. Hope that answers the question.
Exactly.
This was the last question of this session on better half or better half. Inshallah, we'll meet next time. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam. Ala Rasulillah wa ala ali wa sahbihi ajmain. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahunna. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I welcome all of you with the Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace, mercy and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be on all of you. I welcome you to the special program of Better Half or Bitter Half. And in this program, you're most welcome to ask any questions related to marriage, how to conduct a nikah, regarding how marriage life should be led. You can ask any questions that you'd like to know before you say I do, before you say Kabul hai, before you say I accept it, or any questions related to anything that related to your life after you say I do, after you say Kabul hai, after you say I accept it. You're most welcome to ask any questions regarding marriage. In short, you're most welcome to ask any questions so that after you say I do, you should have a successful wedlock and not a padlock. So the program will start better half or bitter half, wedlock or padlock. If any other sisters have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Is it necessary to have the nikah in the mosque?
The sister has a question. Is it necessary to have the nikah in the mosque, or is it a sunnah to have the nikah in the mosque? There is a hadith which is mentioned in hadith of Sunnah Tirmidhi, volume number 2, in the book of nikah, hadith number 1089, which says that the Prophet said that to have nikah in the mosque, but the hadith is zaif hadith. It's a weak hadith. There is no sahih hadith that I know of in which the Prophet recommended that the nikah should take place in a mosque. But if someone wants the nikah to be conducted in a mosque, it is not haram, it's not makruh, it is mubah. If someone conducts in a mosque, it's acceptable. But it is not fard in Islam, neither it is a sunnah. But if someone wants to conduct it, it's good. But the Prophet said that make nikah easy, or the best of marriage is that in which the least expenditure is made. So in this context, if someone has in the mosque, it's perfectly acceptable. It's no problem at all. But it is not fard, neither it is proven from the Quran and Hadith. But a person, if he wants, he can get married in the mosque. Hope that's the question. Any other sisters have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Is it not injustice to give the right to divorce only to men and not to women?
So that's the question, that isn't it injustice when the right of divorce is only given to the man and not to the woman? If you realize the way Islamic marriage takes place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah says in the Quran, it's mentioned in Surah Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 40. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never unjust in the least degree. And the Quran says in Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 228, that the women have rights as against them on terms equitable, but the men have a degree of advantage. So overall, the Quran says the men and women are equal, but some places they have a degree of advantage. And on the other hand, there are hadiths which the Prophet said that respect the mother more. So there the women have a degree of advantage. But this aspect, why do the men have a degree of advantage? The reason is that when a marriage takes place, one of the criteria besides the agreement of both the would-be husband and wife, there is a concept of meher. That it's compulsory, as the Quran says in Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse number 4, that give to the woman a marital gift in marriage. That means meher is compulsory for a marriage to solemnize. So when a meher is given, the would-be wife can demand what she wants. And the Quran says in Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse number 20, you can even give a mountain of gold. So imagine when a marriage takes place, it is the man who is in loss economically. He gives meher. Now once he gives the meher, if suppose the right is given to the woman to divorce and she divorces, who would be the loser? Would be the man. And in case if a divorce takes place, the girl can marry again. When she marries, she gets a new meher. Here, if the man marries, he has to give a new meher. So therefore economically the woman is secured. So based on this, generally by default, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the right to the man to divorce. And furthermore, the Quran says in Surah Nisa chapter 4, verse number 34, Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa, that the men are the supporters of the women. For Allah has given one strength more than the other. So based on this, because man is a qawwam, he is the leader in the family, but naturally by default, the right to divorce goes to the man, because he is the one who looks after the family, etc. But that does not mean a woman cannot demand the rights. During Nikah, if she wishes, she can put a condition that I too want a right to divorce. Because by default it goes to the man, but if the husband wants to give that right even to the would-be wife, he can give. So in the Nikah, if the woman wants, if the would-be wife wants to put a condition, and if the husband agrees, she can put a condition, so both will have the right. But otherwise, by default, without any rules and regulation, the right goes to the man. Otherwise, I'll have to give a talk on men's rights in Islam. Hope that answers the question, sister. Any other sister has any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Is it encouraged to marry within the same community, like Konknis marry only Konknis?
Sister has a question that, is it encouraged for a girl or a boy to marry within the same community, like Konkni marrying Konkni, or Memon marrying Memon? We only got stuck to Konkni, because then I'm a Konkni. So it can go Sheikh marrying a Sheikh, or a Sayyid marrying a Sayyid. So what the beloved Prophet Muhammad said, it's preferable to marry the same type of people, same category, whether it may be in category in terms of ethnicity, whether it may be in terms of economic status, whether it be in terms of community, because the compatibility is there. Because the Konkani have a different style of living, the Memon have a different style of living, the Keralite may have a different style of living, the person, UK, American person, a different style of living, the European may have. So it's easy to gel. So it is preferable, but not a fard. Similarly, imagine an African marrying a European. It can go well, not it's not possible. It's possible, but the chances of compatibility is less. Similarly, a Chinese coming and marrying someone from Kerala, not that it's not possible, it's possible, but if you want to break this barrier for a cause, for example, I'm finding a more virtuous non-Konkani, then I prefer marrying a non-Konkani than marrying a Konkani. For in my case, I could not leave aside Konkani, I could not get a girl from Bombay who I wanted a virtuous, so I had to go to Pune. I had to travel 160 miles. So I not only left the community, I left the city also. So your reason to marry was virtue. So if virtue is the criteria, if you break these barriers of economic status, of nobility, of community, of ethnicity, there's no problem. Otherwise, generally, if exactly same virtues, who is from your community, not from your community, preferable, same virtues from your community. Same virtues who's rich and who's poor, and if you are rich, then same virtues who's rich is preferable. But if you find that one person more virtuous and out of the community is preferable, that one person is more important than matching your community or matching your ethnicity or matching your economic status. But if the virtue is not the criteria, otherwise marrying in the same level is preferable, so that life becomes easier. So when you have a choice to choose the easy part, it's preferable to choose the easy part than the difficult. But that does not mean, because normally in Indian culture it's very common, Konkani should marry a Konkani, 99%. Memon should marry Memon. A Kerala Malayali should marry a Malayali. And that's the reason, they look for this criteria more important than virtue. Yes, I want virtue, but should be a Konkani. I want a virtuous girl, but should be a Memon. So this is just for saying they're more looking for their community rather than virtue. So virtue should be given the most important. Hope that answers the questions. Are there any other questions?
Is it cultural or is it promoted in Islam to give preference to younger women for marriage, or to give preference to virgin over non-virgins, or to give preference over good-looking to average-looking women?
Sister asked the question that is it cultural in Islam, is it preferable in Islam to marry younger women as compared to elder women, to marry more beautiful women as compared to average-looking women, or more wealthier than poor? Is it preferable? It is mubah. Because if you go to the history of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the first woman that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam married, Hazrat Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, she was 15 years elder to the Prophet. The Prophet was 25 years old, Hazrat Khadija was 40 years old. And later on, he had only one wife, till the age of 50, 52, until Hazrat Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, she expired. And only after she expired did the Prophet marry. And after that, when he married the girls that were younger, 36 years old, 32 years old, etc. But preference over young in age, here you have an example. The first marriage is 15 years older. The next marriage is younger. You have example that the Prophet, the first wife he did, Hazrat Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, she was a widower, so she wasn't a virgin. Amongst all the wives, only one wife was virgin. All the others, they were not virgins. They were either widower or they were divorcees. But that does not mean it is sunnah to marry a non-virgin. Then there will be a problem. But in the life of the Prophet gave various examples. Rich, Hazrat Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, she was very rich. The other ladies that the Prophet married, some were poor. So Prophet had an example of rich woman, he married poor woman, elderly woman, younger woman, virgin, non-virgin, more were divorcees, and they were widows. So here you find that cross-section, according to me, it's mubah. But it's a personal choice. As the Prophet said, as I mentioned earlier, according to the hadith of Sahih Bukhari, volume number 7, in the book of Nikah, hadith number 5090, that the beloved Prophet ﷺ said, that when a person marries, he looks for 4 things: beauty, wealth, nobility, and virtue. And amongst them, virtue is the best. So if someone looks for beauty, it's not haram. Someone wants a younger wife, it's not haram. Someone wants a wealthier wife, it's not haram. Someone wants a noble wife, it's not haram. But amongst them, virtue is the best. So more important is the virtue. If you find a virtuous wife and she is less beautiful, it's preferable to marry a less beautiful wife than who's less virtuous. So virtuous wife who's less beautiful is preferable than more beautiful and less virtuous. So all these things, virtue carries more weight. But Islamic, there's nothing like which is preferable in the other criteria. As far as virtuous is concerned, it is preferable for sure. Hope that answers the questions. Inshallah, we'll be continuing the session after a short break.
Nikah Mubarak, Nikah Mubarak, Zawajun Mubarak.
Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you back to the program, Better Half or Better Halves. And we'll continue our question answer session regarding marriage. Are there any sisters who have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What is the duty of the daughter to her parents after marriage? Should she obey them or her husband?
This is the question that what is the duty of a daughter to her parents after she married? Should she obey the husband or the parents? I feel she should obey both. The best is obey both. But if there is a conflict, who is more important? But naturally, before marriage, obeying the parents is most important. After marriage also it's important, but once she gets married, she goes to a different family. So if there is a conflict between both, we have to see that who is more on the Quran and Sunnah. Is it the husband or is it her parents? So based on that, she makes the decision. But if both are neutral, both are not against the Quran and Sunnah, then you try and convince either of them that to change their views so that you can follow both your parents and satisfy your husband. But if there is really a conflict and both are not against Quran, Sunnah, and yet, so but naturally the tilt goes more towards the husband after marriage. Little bit more because you have a family to look after, but that does not mean you neglect your parents, you disobey your parents. Only if the conflict is such that both are on the Quran and Sunnah, and then you have to choose between one of them. So it's preferable you satisfy both. At the last resort, if you have to take a balance, but now the balance tilts more towards the husband, because he becomes your immediate family, not that your parents are not. But at the same time, if you can convince your husband and yet obey your parents, that is the best. Hope that answers the question. Any sisters have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Why is the Ida period after the death of a husband is longer than the Ida period after the divorce?
Sister has the question that why is the Iddah period after the death of a husband longer as compared to the Iddah period after the divorce? In both the Iddah, as the Quran says in Surah Baqarah chapter number 2 verse number 228, that when you divorce your wife, there is the Iddah period of 3 menstrual cycle or 3 monthly periods. But when a person dies, the Quran says that after your husband expires, the Iddah period is for 4 months, 10 days. So the Iddah period after a husband expires is 1 month, 10 days longer. For divorce, it's 3 months. For after that, it's 4 months, 10 days. Why? The reason the Iddah period is there, there are various reasons. One of the major reasons after divorce that the Iddah period is there, to come to know whether the wife is carrying the child of the husband. So if during the Iddah period, there are various reasons. One reason is it's more for preliminary test, as I said. That can the husband or wife stay away from each other. So it's a temporary period. In 2 weeks you come to know, I thought we got angry with my wife because she doesn't iron my clothes. And I felt that let's stay away. And now I realize in 2 weeks' time, I'm in a more difficult situation. Let's patch up. Let's reconcile. Or the wife may think I'm getting angry, that my husband gives me less time. You only give me 5 hours a day. And now in 2 weeks I realize that even if you give me 2 hours, no problem. Something is better than nothing. So they can patch up. So various reasons are there. But one of the other reasons is that to come to know whether the wife is carrying the child of the husband. So if she's carrying, it extends, the Iddah period extends till the time of delivery. And furthermore, no one should allege that if they part, and in 3 months' time, you can easily come to know without doing any medical test that is she carrying a child or not. In the olden days, there was no examination like what we have. Ultrasonography, amniocentesis, various pregnancy tests. Amniocentesis for sex determination. You don't have the pregnancy test like we have today. But pregnancy is not the only reason. But at that time, 3 months is sufficient to come to know whether the woman is carrying the child of the husband or not. Pregnancy is not the only criteria, it's one of the important criteria. Besides that, as I said, that can you stay away, etc., it's a preliminary period. But in case of the death of a husband, when divorce takes place, everything is planned. Planned means divorce doesn't take place suddenly. First, there's mutual consultation between husband and wife if you go according to the correct sunnah. If you go to the wrong bidah style, talaq, then it may take place in a second. You get angry and you start, which is not Islamic at all. It's talaq-e-bidat, as I discussed last time. If you go to the Islamic procedure of talaq, first there's mutual consultation between husband and wife. Then if it cannot be solved, then you appoint an arbiter. Then you wait. Then normally divorce takes place. It takes weeks and months. Sometimes even a year. So it is planned and you know something is going on. And then there is the period for 3 months. Compared to in a case of a husband dying, most of the time it's sudden death. Maybe an accident. Maybe he has a disease. Some rare cases he is terminally ill and you know he's dying slowly, but the chance is less. So most of the time in death, you don't expect your husband to die. So here the wife is in a state of mental shock. So besides coming to know whether she's carrying a child in which 3 months is sufficient, so no one lays an allegation on her that she has illicit sex, billah, with some man, and after the husband has died, she's carrying a child of someone else. So in that period is a period to know whether she's carrying the child. One of the reasons. But why is it 1 month, 10 days more? Because when the woman undergoes a sudden loss or shock that she does not have a husband, this time is given for her to settle down. That's the reason during the iddah she cannot make any contract to marry someone else. And if she makes it, it's not valid. After the iddah is over, because maybe she's in a state of shock and someone says, I want to marry, she says she's not secured, she's very scared, and she may agree to marry someone who's not good also. So the iddah period is extended. So 4 months, 10 days is sufficient to let the mental shock come down, for the woman to come in normal state, so that she can take the decision to remarry. So it's a longer iddah, longer waiting period, and she can take a much wiser decision, whether she has to marry again, who she chooses, etc. That's the reason for the iddah after death of husband is longer as compared to divorce. Hope that answers the question, sister. Any other gents have any questions? Any brothers? Oh, mashallah, Arshi.
Assalamu alaikum.
So I've consulted a wife. Wa alaikum salam.
Many young men today, they give priority to their careers as opposed to getting married soon. So they wait till they're in their mid-30s or 40s and they wait too long to get married. So is there any specific thing on this that you may shed some light?
That's a good question. That many a times today the youngsters, they give more preference to the career rather than marriage, and they say, I want to make my career. Mujhe mere pair pe khada hona hai. So I said, why in the teenage also you can stand on your feet? The other says, I want to stand on my own feet. That means I want to actually be financially independent. That's what they mean. They want to be a doctor or engineer or start doing a good job where they earn. So normally by the time they are settled and good job, it becomes past 30s or late 20s. That's also very early. Past 30s or mid 30s, early 30s. So how important is it to establish your career before you get married? See, marriage is part of life and career is also part of life. I feel a person should not delay the marriage just because of career or even for education. Fine. I'm not saying that he should get married in his teens. If he's mature, if he wants, he can. Islam gives permission once a person has reached puberty, he or she can. But don't delay it too much, as the beloved Prophet ﷺ said. Mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, volume number 7, in the book of Nikah, chapter number 3, hadith number 4, that, oh young people, whoever had the means to get married, they should get married. Helps you to lower your gaze and guard your modesty also. These people normally delay thinking, what they think that, once I marry, then for me to look after my wife will be an obstruction in my studies, would be an obstruction in establishing my career. In fact, it is wrong. Imagine if a person is doing medical studies. If he is married, the wife will help him. So if you look at the positive side, if you marry and then appear for a post-graduation, it's easy, She'll help you. She'll help you make notes if required. She may help you see to it you're made comfortable. Normally you only have your mother, now you have a mother and wife both too. So if you have a career, so what's the problem? Yes, there's a fear that if I know only when I earn myself. Therefore the Prophet said, if you have the means. So most of these people who talk, their parents are already rich. They already have a good saving. So if finance is not the problem, I feel they should get married. And in establishing the business is easier. The wife can support you. Because wife, as I mentioned, is the role of garments. So I disagree with that concept that marry late. Because if you marry early, then you'll have your children also early. And some people say, oh, no, I want to relax, Even if you have to relax, marry early. You marry in your early 20s, have children, fast. By the time you're 40, your child is already 18, 19. You can sit on a business, you can retire before you reach 40. Otherwise, you have to wait till 60. So if you want to enjoy life also, marry early. Have children. Have your children take care of your business. So you can be free and you can relax earlier. So even to enjoy life, it is better you marry early. And one more thing, you don't go to the evil of society. Because when you're young, there are high chances you can be deviated. High chances that when you do your graduation and post-graduation, for you to be on the Sirat al-Mustaqim is difficult. If you have a wife, she is your Mohsena, she is the fortress against your devil, and more chances that you can concentrate on your studies. When you go to school, normally in co-ed schools and colleges, they say you spend more time in trying to be a hero in front of the opposite sex than doing studies. So now you already have a heroine with you. You already have a wife with you, so you won't waste your time otherwise, and it will help you to concentrate on your studies better. So I feel even if you have to study or look after a career, it's better that you get married earlier. Hope that answers the question. Any other sister has any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Is it encouraged to marry within the same community like Konknis marry only Konknis?
Sister has a question that, is it encouraged for a girl or a boy to marry within the same community, like Konkni marrying Konkni or Memon marrying Memon? We only got stuck to Konkni because then I'm a Konkni. So it can go Sheikh marrying a Sheikh or a Sayyid marrying a Sayyid. So the beloved Prophet Muhammad said, it's preferable to marry the same type of people, same category, whether it may be in category in terms of ethnicity, whether it may be in terms of economic status, whether it be in terms of community, because the compatibility is there. Because the Konkani have a different style of living, the Memon have a different style of living, the Keralite may have a different style of living, the person, UK American person, different style of living, the European may have. So it's easy to gel. So it is preferable, but not a fard. Similarly, imagine an African marrying a European. It can go well, not it's not possible. It's possible, but the chances of compatibility is less. Similarly, Chinese coming and marrying someone from Kerala, not that it's not possible, it's possible, but if you want to break this barrier for a cause, for example, I'm finding a more virtuous non-Konkni, then I prefer marrying a non-Konkni than marrying a Konkni. For in my case, I could not leave aside Konkni, I could not get a girl from Bombay who I wanted a virtuous, so I had to go to Pune. I had to travel 160 miles. So I not only left the community, I left the city also. So your reason to marry was virtue. So if virtue is the criteria, if you break these barriers of economic status, of nobility, of community, of ethnicity, there's no problem. Otherwise, generally, if exactly same virtues, who is from your community, not from your community, preferable, same virtues from your community. Same virtues who's rich and who's poor, and if you are rich, then same virtues who's rich is preferable. But if you find that one person more virtuous and out of the community is preferable, that one person is more important than matching your community or matching your ethnicity or matching your economic status. But if the virtue is not the criteria, otherwise marrying in the same level is preferable, so that life becomes easier. So when you have a choice to choose the easy part, it's preferable to choose the easy part than the difficult. But that does not mean, because normally in Indian culture it's very common, Konkani should marry a Konkani, 99%. Memon should marry Memon. A Keralite Malayali should marry a Malayali. And that's the reason, they look for this criteria more important than virtue. Yes, I want virtue, but should be a Konkani. I want a virtuous girl, but should be a Memon. So this is just for saying they're more looking for their community rather than virtue. So virtue should be given the most important. Hope that answers the questions. Are there any other questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Are the parents allowed to forcefully marry their daughter to whom she does not like?
This is the question that, does Islam permit the parents to force the daughter to marry someone who they want her to marry, but the daughter does not want? In Islam, forcing anyone to marry is not permissible. The permission or the agreement of both would-be husband and wife is very important. Both husband and wife, would-be husband and wife, should agree to get married. Then only can the nikah solemnize. Then only can the marriage solemnize. But natural. The parents can guide the children, guide the daughter, give advice, give suggestions. It is good. And normally the parents give good suggestions. But if the girl feels that the parent are not suggesting a right life partner, and she wants a more Islamic life partner, or if the parents say marry Islamic life partner, and the girl says no, that I don't want to marry Islamic, I want to marry a rich and handsome man rather than an Islamic man. So then I feel that the parents are right, and in this case the parents will get sawab, that they are forcing the daughter to be on the straight path. But if the girl feels that the parents want a handsome man and a rich man, but she wants a pious man, a pious husband, so in this case she's right. So it depends upon who is more on the Quran and Sunnah. But generally, a father or a mother cannot force the daughter to marry someone who she does not like. Because the hadith mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, volume number 7, in the book of Nikah, chapter number 69, hadith number 649, that once a lady by the name of Khansa bin Khadim al-Ansariya approached the Prophet and said, my father has forced me to marry a man who I don't like. And the Prophet, he nullified the marriage. So based on this, it's clear that the permission and the agreement of both would-be husband and wife is equally important. Hope that answers the question. Any sisters have any questions? I'll come back to you. Any sisters have any questions?
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Are marriages between cousins encouraged, as scientifically it's proved that the children of the couples, they have genetic defects?
Sister asked the question that marrying among first cousins has proven it causes genetic problems. What she's referring to is consanguineous marriages. That in consanguineous marriages, where the close blood relatives, cousins marry, as far as the Quran is concerned, Quran says in Surah Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 23, 24, 25, it gives the people who you cannot marry. The Quran says you cannot marry your mother. You cannot marry the woman who your father has married. You cannot marry the sister of your father. You cannot marry the sister of your mother. You cannot marry your own sister. You cannot marry your daughter. And the list is given. But in this list, the first cousin aren't mentioned. So based on this verse of the Quran, among the prohibited marriages, the Quran does not prohibit you to marry your first cousins. But direct blood relations, the Quran prohibits. Now today's scientific research says that if you marry your blood relation, direct blood relation, brother and sister, mother and son, father and daughter, then there are high chances, very high chances of having genetic problems. Furthermore, even if you marry among the first cousins, the chances are there, but the chances are less. Even if you marry someone who's unknown to you, yet the chances are there, but it is very negligible. But if you marry amongst the first cousin, the chances are not the same as you marry your direct blood relationship, brother and sister. But if you marry the first cousin, chances are more than marrying an unknown person, but compared to direct blood brother and sister, it is negligible. What the scientific research says today, that continuously if you marry amongst the cousins, the mother and father are cousins, their children marry their cousins, their children marry their cousins. This is common in some of the communities. Like if you go to Tamil Nadu, there are some communities which have a concept of only marrying amongst the cousins. So then generation after generation, if you do, there are high chances of having these genetic problems. Otherwise, normally, once if you marry or twice, it is negligible. Continuously, so it's more cultural based rather than Islam. And it's not a sunnah in Islam to marry your first cousin. It is mubah, it's optional. And since marrying once only, has hardly any negligible impact, but continuously generation after generation, generation after generation, there's a problem. And there is a hadith which was quoted by Ahmad Sakhr. He said that, one hadith he quoted, that the Prophet has not encouraged marrying first cousins generation after generation. Hope that answers the question. Any other sisters have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Is there more reward or blessing to arrange for nikah on Fridays?
Is there more reward and blessing when you arrange the nikah on Friday?
Fridays, yes.
As far as my knowledge goes, I don't know of any verse in the Quran. I don't know of any hadith which says that when you marry on Friday, you get more reward. I don't know of any hadith. I don't know of any Quranic verse. But natural, but it's permissible. It's not haram also to get married on a Friday. I feel it's mubah. You can get married on Friday. Friday is the weekly Eid, as we say. So no problem if you choose a Friday. But there's no sunnah of the Prophet that is recommended that you marry on a Friday. But Friday is a weekly Eid. If you get married, there's no problem at all. It's good, alhamdulillah. But there is no particular hadith or a Quranic verse saying that it's preferable or you get more reward. Hope that answers the question. Any other sisters have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
The Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that majority in the hellfire will be women because they are ungrateful to their husbands. But today we see that most of the men are committing so many crimes. I mean, rapes and murders and so many other crimes. So then, please explain. Yeah, even alcohol. Please explain.
Sister asked the question that the Prophet said that majority of the people in hell would be women. And one of the reasons is that they're ungrateful to their husbands. Sister asked the question that today you find men committing murder, committing rape, having alcohol. So what about them? If you analyze, sister, today in the world, as I mentioned in my earlier answer on polygyny, that there are more women in the world than men. Even if we take for granted, or just as a normal mathematical equation, that equal percentage of men will go to hell as compared to the women, an equal percentage of men and women would go to heaven, an equal percentage to hell, because women are more in this world. In hell also there will be more. But that means in heaven there will be more, inshallah. Because again, there's another hadith where the Prophet said that for every man there will be multiple hur. So in that logical also equation, the woman would be more in heaven also. So don't get so much dejected. Look at the better side of it. And one of the reasons that the Prophet said women would go to hell, one of the major reason is that because they're ungrateful to their husbands. What is the major reason that men will go is not mentioned. Fine, it may be murder, I don't know, but I doubt it will be murder. All the men aren't committing murder. So that doesn't mean that men will not go to hell. But one of the major reasons why women will go to hell is because they're ungrateful to their husbands. And that you see nowadays, you do find women try to be independent, they try to be, because they're going away from Quran and Sunnah. So the hadith is correct, but that does not mean that men will not go to hell and the women will not be in majority in heaven. Hope that answers the question.
If a husband is irresponsible and does not take care of the family and of the needs of the family, and he also does not provide education for the children, in such a situation, what should a wife do?
If the husband does not take care of the family, does not look after, does not give the rights, the economic rights, does not take care of the children, so in this case, what should the wife do? The wife should try and convince the husband to look after the family. That's the first thing. Because she's the Mohsena, she's the fortress against the devil. And there's a normal problem that we have normally, that the wives keep on complaining about the husband and the husband keeps on complaining about the wife, and this is a common thing everywhere. It is more for a relationship of hand and glove, as I mentioned. So maybe the wife should have an introspection that maybe if she is more close to the husband, if she is more loving to the husband, maybe the husband will take more care. So many a time, tali dua se bachti hai. You clap with two hands, you can't clap with one hand. But normally everyone points the finger at others. When they point the finger at others, they fail to realize three fingers are pointing to themselves. So it's not always black and white. Husband at fault, wife at fault. Many a times it's the fault of both. When a problem arises in a family, it's many a time the problem between both. And even if one of them is Islamic and follows the Quran and Sunnah and has sabr, inshallah most of the problems will be solved. Problem is there, that means both are not following Quran and Sunnah properly. If both of them have sabr, both of them follow Quran and Sunnah, either they change the other spouse and they prevent any problem taking place. But in such a situation, the wife should try and counsel the husband, be good to him. But if he continues, then she should try and help the husband look after the family. It's not bad. And depending upon how much is he not giving the rights, is he torturing the wife, is he beating the wife, depending on the extent where she cannot bear, then she takes the decision whether she continues or she parts. That's her decision. Hope that answers the question. Are there any brothers who have any questions?
MashaAllah, I want to say one thing that Alhamdulillah, the effect of this program has already started. Shams is telling me that he wants to get married.
MashaAllah, very good, Alhamdulillah.
My question is that, as Arshi said, that
you have a virtuous bachelor. Are you earning more than 4,000 rupees? MashaAllah, good.
As Brother Arshi said that there are some youngsters who, because of their career, they reject marriages. I want to ask that there are some women who delay their motherhood because of their careers, although it may be Islamic. They maybe want to be a daya or whatsoever it may be, but they delay their motherhood. So is this permissible in Islam?
Before I answer your question, I'd like to ask you that has this program had an effect on you?
Alhamdulillah.
It had an effect on your person sitting next to you, but on you, did it have an effect?
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. When are you getting married?
Inshallah.
How soon?
After I consulted with you.
After?
Inshallah.
After you consult with me?
Yeah.
My consultation as soon as possible. Tomorrow if possible. I don't know, tomorrow is too early. Next month.
Next year.
Next year? See, this is the problem. You say you consult me, and then I give you advice and you delay it. So if you get the good wife, then why not next month? If not, then next year.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Fine, that's good. As far as coming to your question, that the earlier question was that people want to delay marriage because they want to make a career, etc. But some of the ladies want to delay their motherhood. They don't want to give birth to a child because they want to maintain the career, etc. Is it correct? I feel this is totally wrong. Why? Because the amount of sawab that a lady gets by being a mother is phenomenal. And our beloved Prophet Muhammad said, it's mentioned in the hadith of Sahih Bukhari, from number 8, in the book of Adab, chapter number 2, hadith number 2, a person came to the Prophet and asked him, that who deserves the maximum love and companionship in this world? The Prophet said, your mother. The man asked after that too. The Prophet said, your mother. The man asked after that too. Again the Prophet said, your mother. The man asked after that too. Then the Prophet said, your father. That means 3/4, 75% of the love and companionship goes to the mother. 25%, 1/4 goes to the father. In short, the mother gets the gold medal, she gets the silver medal, as well as the bronze medal. The father has to be satisfied with the mere consolation prize. So the amount of respect, the amount of thawab, the blessings that a woman gets in becoming a mother is phenomenal. 9 months that your mother has borne you in the womb, even if you give a mountain of gold, you cannot compensate. Even if you give the wealth of this world, you cannot compensate. So now if someone wants to sacrifice the motherhood for earning maybe a few dollars more or a few $1,000s more, I feel she is a very poor businesswoman. A good businesswoman will say that fine, this she's losing more. To earn little bit, she's losing more. So I disagree with the concept of delaying motherhood, either for having a better education or a better career, etc. I feel she should marry, she should have children, and then whatever happens, it should continue in that same process of life. Hope that answers the question. Any sisters have any questions?
Like brother mentioned about the guys having the problem of career.
Boys.
No, so then what about, then we should leave our career. What about us? We won't be able to manage pregnancy as well as continuing with education. At least we need to complete our graduation and then go in for marriage.
Sister asks the question, then what about a career? If we marry, we cannot continue a graduation and a career. What about a career is gone? Sister, what is the definition of career? What do you mean by career? What is the definition of career?
Education, at least minimum education.
I'm asking, what is the definition of career?
I don't know the exact definition.
What do you feel is career?
Getting educated to the minimum standards.
No, that is education.
Get a job.
Career first, then come to
Get a
education.
job.
Get a job. So career means get a job.
No, getting educated so that you can get the job which you want.
That's education. Talking about job or talking about career?
I'm talking about education to get a job. Okay, but this doesn't apply to women. I'm not talking about getting educated if you want to go in for Islamic work. So minimum education which you require.
Fine. If you are doing education for a job, then you need not educate yourself, because according to Islam, as I mentioned earlier, the financial burden is on the shoulders of the man. A woman need not worry about her lodging, boarding, clothing. She's financially secured. Before she's married, the duty of the father and the brother. After she's married, the duty of the husband and the son to look after lodging, boarding, clothing, all aspects. So if education is for job, forget about it. But that does not mean a woman should not be educated, because education is also for being a good mother. Education can also help in the field of Islam or the field of Dawah. But what I told you, that a person can be a graduate in the early 20s. So as I said, if a person wants to marry in the late teens, no one can stop her. But at least in the early 20s, you should marry. And surely you finish your graduation in the early 20s. I'm not saying that stop. But post-graduation, fine, may be a problem. You do your post-graduation maybe in 22 years, 23 years. Post-graduation can yet be done after marrying. The pregnancy, if it comes in the way, you do it the next year. What's the problem? Do you have to go for a job? For a man, fine, he'll think, if I lose 1 year, I lose 1 year's salary. For the woman, instead of 1 year, she can take 2 years. If it is a 2 years course and pregnancy takes place, she can take 3 years, she can take 4 years, she can do correspondence course, no problem at all. So marriage never is a hurdle. But the minimum what you're talking about, graduation, is easily possible before the early 20s. As far as career, fine. There are some ladies who want to do career, want to do modeling, want to do dancing, so surely marriage will come in the way. And all these careers are haram. Modeling, dancing, air hostess, exploiting the body of the woman. But natural. As far as the other jobs, as I said, financially a woman is secured. So again, the education will not generally come in between her marriage. It will not. Further studies, you can do post-graduation, super speciality, you can study till the age of 40 or so, no problem. Do you mean to say you're not married till the age of 40? So I feel marriage is never a hindrance in case of education, whether it's a girl or a boy. Neither career is. I feel if you marry early, it's preferable so that you start enjoying life more, you start earning more sawab, and half your deen is complete earlier. So if half your deen is complete, you start getting more sawab. Now you say you want to start half your deen at the age of 30. Why not start at the age of 20? So imagine, sure you realize that if you marry early, you have more chances of getting sawab earlier. So losing, I don't know how long will you live. You don't know if at the age of 25 or not. So therefore, earlier the marriage, the better. If you have the means, it's preferable, and it will let you lead a more Islamically aligned life. Hope that answers the question. So all those who are not married have decided to get married, and all those already married decided to be a better husband and a better wife, inshallah. Inshallah, we end the session and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may He guide us in leading a life and coming closer to Quran and Sunnah. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
From this day on forever be true. Cherish this life that's destined for you. Live your life with kindness and care. Remember, Allah will always be there, be there. Nikahun mubarakun, mubarakun. Zawajun mubarakun, mubarakun. An-nikahu min sunnati.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam, ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi ashabi ajmain, amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hunna libasul lakum, wa antum libasul lahunna. Rabbi shrah li sadri, wa yassir li amri, wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I welcome all the viewers with the Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And now, we'll be having a special session. That is a call-in session where the viewers are most welcome to telephone at the studio and ask questions. But these questions will specifically be asked only by the sisters. And the topic for today's discussion is on marriage, especially on marriage preparation and how you should choose your life partner. May we have the question from the first sister.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Brother, there's a dua which the husband recites after marriage, that is holding the forelocks of the bride, and basically that is to keep away from the evil of the bride. So the same dua is also recited when you buy a new animal. Is it that the woman has been degraded to the level of an animal?
Sister has a question. That is hadith, and she's right that when you marry, you hold the forelock and recite a dua. The same thing is for dua for animal. Is it that you're equating the animal you're buying and the wife compared to an animal, etc.? Sister, if you analyze that, anything which is new, it is a dua that you say. For example, anything happens, you say Alhamdulillah, you say MashaAllah, etc. These are things of praising Allah and thanking Allah. For example, if I say that, oh, I got an animal, and the animal is very healthy, MashaAllah, animal is very healthy. And if I say, MashaAllah, Allah gave me a very good wife. So that doesn't mean I'm trying to equate my wife to the animal. It is I'm thanking God. So if I thank God for any good thing, whether it be a good animal or a good wife, anything good, that doesn't mean I'm equating, sister. It is a dua thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, may the new thing that I've got, may it be good, etc. Or you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a good fortune. That doesn't mean when I make a statement for Alhamdulillah, praising Allah, saying MashaAllah, that as Allah will, it is equating, it is thanking Allah for any good things. So here also doing a dua that may Allah give me a good spouse, because she is new, you don't know how she is. Similarly with animal, you don't know how the animal is, new animal. So dua is somewhat similar, but that doesn't mean equating. An animal has its own right and a wife has its own right. It doesn't mean that equating, though the dua may be the same, sister.
Why isn't the wife required to read that dua? Because the husband is, that's also new for the wife.
The sister asked that, why isn't the wife? Because, sister, the wife is coming to a new atmosphere. So the dua is made because someone is coming into your house. She is coming to a new atmosphere. In this, a new person is coming to an old atmosphere. And because in a family life, sister, though men and women overall in Islam are equal, but as far as the family life is concerned, the leader of the family is the husband. Where it comes to taking final decision, it is the husband who has the degree of advantage, sister. So in this case, it's preferable for the leader to make the dua rather than a person not the leader. So similarly for an imam, when he is there, when there is a khutbah after the Eidain Salah, sister, it is the Imam who makes the dua, not the Muttadi, because he's the Imam. So similarly, because the Imam of the family, the leader of the family, is a husband because he's a breadwinner, no, that doesn't mean that he can ill-treat the wife and he has superiority complex. That's totally wrong. But because the financial burden and the other burdens, the physical burden, the protection burden, is laid on the shoulders of the husband, he is the leader of the family. That is the reason he recited the dua, sister. Hope that answers the question.
My question is, at Prophet times, Prophet used to practice marriages like several wives he was having, but there were several good reasons, like take example, making good relationship with tribes or jihad. But today as such, there is no such reason, whereas merely it is just a desire to have more than one spouse. And how much practically it is right today to practice this thing?
Sister, the question in short, why is polygamy allowed in this age? She agrees that marriage the Prophet did was for political reasons, to improve the relationship between the tribes and for spread of Islam. She agrees with that, so I don't have to give the reply why Prophet had several wives. But she asks that today, when this thing is not there, why are people marrying? Sister, there's a difference between the reason of the marriage of the Prophet of more than 4 wives that he had, compared to the reason why a normal Muslim is allowed to have more than 1 wife. The reason for the Prophet's marriage you know very well, so I don't have to discuss that. But as far as the reason for a normal Muslim being given the permission by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to marry more than 1 wife, sister, as we are aware today that Quran is the only religious book on the face of the earth which says marry only 1. There is no other religious scripture, whether it be the Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, Hindu scriptures, or the Christian scriptures, whether it be the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, no religious scripture on the face of the earth says marry only 1 besides the Quran. If you read the other scriptures, if you read the Ramayana, the father of Sri Ram, King Dashrath, he had more than 1 wife. Shri Krishna, if you read Mahabharata, he had several wives. He had more than 16,000 wives. If you read the Old Testament, Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, he had 700 wives. Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, had 3 wives according to the Bible. So the religious scriptures give a person to marry as many wives as they wish. And it is the church who put a restriction that a Christian should marry only 1. It is Rabbi Genshem bin Yehuda who passed a synod that the Jews should marry only 1. It is the Indian Penal Code in 1954 which passed a law, the Special Hindu Marriage Act, which says the Hindu should marry only 1. The Hindu scriptures give permission that a Hindu can marry as many wives as he wishes. And there's a survey done from 1951 to 1961, which was published by the government of India, the State of the Woman in Islam, on page number 65-66, it says that polygamous marriages done by the Indian Muslims in the span of 10 years was 4.31%. And the polygamous marriages done by the Hindus was 5.06. So Hindus do more polygamous marriages in India as compared to the Muslims. Now let's analyze what does the Quran say. Quran says in Surah Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 3. Marry a woman of your choice in 2s, 3s or 4s, but if you can't do justice, marry only 1. This statement, marry only 1, is only given in the Quran and no other religious scripture. And if we analyze the logical reason why Islam gives us permission to have more than 1 wife, is that by nature, male and female are born in equal proportion. But if you ask any pediatrician, the doctor of the children, he will tell you that the female child, the girl, can fight the diseases and the germs much better than the male child. So there are more deaths among the male children as compared to female children. So in the pediatric age itself, there are more females as compared to males. As life goes on, there is death due to cigarette smoking, due to alcoholism, due to accidents, due to wars. There are more deaths amongst the males as compared to the females. And today in the world, there are more females as compared to the males. In few countries, especially third world countries, including India, the male population is more than the female population. This is because of female infanticide and female feticide. And according to a report that came on BBC, there was a reporter by the name of Emily Beckonen, who tells us that every year in India, more than 1 million fetuses are being aborted after they identified that they're females. Every day, more than 3,000 fetuses are being aborted after they identified that they're females. According to Tamil Nadu government hospital report, out of 10 females born alive, 4 are put to death. If this evil practice of female feticide and female infanticide stops, even in India within a couple of decades, the female population will become more than the male population. Today, if we analyze throughout the world, there are more females as compared to males. In New York alone, there are 1 million females more than males. In USA alone, there are 7.8 million females more than males. In UK alone, there are 4 million females more than males. In Germany alone, there are 5 million females more than males. In Russia alone, there are 9 million females more than males. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone knows how many millions of females are more than the males throughout the world. If I agree with those people who say that one man should only marry one woman, and if suppose my sister happens to live in America, or your sister happens to live in America, and if the market is saturated, every man has already found a life partner. Yet there will be 7.8 million females in USA alone who will not find life partners. And my sister or your sister happens to be one of those 7.8 million females who has not found a life partner for herself. The only option remaining for her is that she either marries a man who already has a wife, or she has to compromise on her chastity. Any modest woman would prefer that she marries a man who already has a wife, rather than compromising on the chastity and the modesty. So Islam actually permits certain men to have more than one wife, to let all the women as a whole in the world to live modestly. It is for the protection of the women. It is not only for sex or for pleasure. One of the reasons can be that he is hypersexual, he requires more than one wife. So instead of going out to the market and doing wrong things, doing sin, he is allowed to have more than one wife. This is one of the reasons. But that's not the only reason, sister. It is also to prevent the woman from losing their chastity. And in the Western world, it's common that a person has several sexual partners. On an average, an American has more than 8 different sexual partners before he settles down with one. Some have 5, some have 10, some have 20, some have 30. They have mistresses. It's very common. It goes down their throat. But having more than one legal wife doesn't go down their throat. So Islam, when a person has more than one wife, both the women, they get the honor, they get the rights. As compared to a mistress, she doesn't get a right, she is not honored, she is not respected. So in Islam, polygamy or polygyny, a man having more than one wife, has been allowed. Besides other reasons, one of the reasons is to protect the modesty of the woman's sister. Hope that answers the question.
But practically, I don't think today any person gets married just because of these reasons. They get married just because they like or they want, maybe their desires only. Do you think practically anybody thinks that there are women's population more, or due to infanticide, or whatever reasons?
Sister asked the question that hardly anyone marries for this reason, more is for sex. It is not because of more population. Sister, you are not aware that there are more ladies who are not married, who have difficulties in finding husbands, than boys having difficulty in finding wives. You may be aware that you will find more girls who are available for marriage rather than boys. So I disagree with you, sister, and there are many. Maybe in India there are very few people who may do for that reason, because the population of India, sister, the male population is more. But in the other parts of the world, whether you go to Gulf countries, etc., they do this for a reason. I don't agree with you. But I do agree that there are some people who even do it for other reasons. And sister, there's no harm. For example, if you marry a person, if you marry a man who's hypersexual, and there are chances that biologically he's hypersexual. So the only option there for your husband is that he either keeps you as a wife and goes out in the market and satisfies his sex, go to a public property. The option is that he either goes out in the market and satisfies his lust, or he takes another wife. Some people say, I wouldn't mind my husband going out as long as legally doesn't have a wife, because if legally has a wife, there are so many rights I have to give. This is the shallow thinking of the woman, sister. Because you fail to realize that if you give permission for your husband to go out in the market and satisfy his requirement, if he's not satisfied with one wife, you fail to realize he may acquire certain diseases, he may get AIDS. So actually you're not thinking for the betterment of your husband. A good Muslimah, if she realizes that she alone is not able to satisfy the requirement of the husband, she should tell the husband, why don't you take another wife? I will welcome her. And by doing this, sister, she is actually, if you realize, she is even safeguarding herself. Because if your husband goes out in the market and satisfies his requirements, there are chances he will get sexually transmitted diseases, he may get AIDS, and he may transmit it to you also. Besides causing his life in danger, you are causing even your life in danger. If there is certain biological problems or requirements of your husband, where he does require more than one life partner to satisfy requirements, a good Muslimah will tell the husband, why don't you take another virtuous wife? So the problem is that the women do not understand the Islamic Sharia. And a good Muslim who realizes that today the market is saturated. There are many sisters who have not got life partners. So the Islamic Sharia says, I do agree, no woman, no girl would ever like to share her husband. As a whole, I do agree with that. But the Islamic Sharia says, let a small loss take place to prevent a big loss. So in this case, if she realizes there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of women who cannot find life partners because of the ratio of the women being high, and if she says, I would not mind my husband if she protects such a woman, if he wants to. So what you are doing is you are letting a small loss take place, but natural, emotionally, a person will feel bad that the husband is being shared. But in the long run, you are letting a small loss take place to prevent a big loss. You are preventing your other Muslimah, another Muslim sister, from becoming a public property. So if you understand the Sharia correctly, sister, and the Muslimah understand the Sharia correctly, sister, then there are no problems. Hope that answers the question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Can you please explain the concept of halala in Islam? What do you mean by halala?
Sister has a question that what is the concept of halala? Sister, there is no concept of halala. This is what is said in our society, halala. What you're referring to is that when a husband gives divorce to the wife and he gives triple talaq, 3 times he gives divorce and it's irrevocable divorce, then there's a verse in the Quran in Surah Baqarah chapter number 2, verse number 228 to 240, which speaks about the divorce, etc. And it says in Surah Baqarah chapter 2, verse number 230, it says that divorce is only permissible thrice. The 3rd time it is irrevocable. After that you cannot remarry. So the divorce is taken place according to the Sharia. You cannot remarry a wife who you have given divorce thrice. How to give, you can refer to my video cassettes. In this case, you cannot remarry her unless you marry another husband. That means that if you marry a person and you give divorce, again you remarry her, again you give divorce, again you remarry, again you give divorce, in the normal context of the Islamic Sharia, then Islam says that you cannot keep on doing, marriage is not like I say, gudda guddi ka khel nahi hai. It's not a marriage of dolls. So fine, once, fine, twice, fine, 3rd time, it's irrevocable. After that you cannot marry unless you marry someone else. And like I give the example, many times our mother, they tell us that a market mein jayenge to dal aate ka bhav malum padega. Dal aate ka bhav means dal or aate ka bhav malum padega. You will come to know the rate of the dal and the flour, etc. You may think that your husband is not good and you don't want to stay with him, or he doesn't want to stay with you, and then you realize, oh, my wife was so good. So you remarry, again you divorce, again there's divorce, again you remarry. So then after that, after 3rd time, it's irrevocable. You can only marry if the ex-wife marries somebody else, and if in the normal course of time, then she realizes, okay, my first husband was better, the second is more worse, and if a divorce takes place, then she can remarry the former husband. So this system in some of the societies called as halala. That is what happens, that in ignorance, the husband gives 3 divorces, and then he goes to the ulama, to the sheikh, to the maulana, and says that I have given irrevocable divorce. So they plan a halala. Planning, okay, fine, now you have done a mistake, so now what you can do, you have to sleep with a man and marry him just for namesake, and then after consummating the marriage, then give divorce. Planning such a thing is haram in Islam. You cannot plan such a thing. I know many people do it. It's haram. You cannot plan that I'll marry a person and then I'll consummate the marriage. I call it legalized prostitution. It's totally haram in Islam. You marry with the intention of staying with the person, and then if you realize in the course of time that the husband is not good, and if divorce takes place, then you can remarry the former husband who has given you 3 divorces. So there's no concept of halala, a planned mock scene where you marry and consummate and again remarry the former husband. It's totally haram, sister. But if it happens in the course of time, where triple divorce has been given, 3 divorces given, and you marry a new husband, and then you realize the first one is better, and the divorce takes place, and then you remarry, there's no problem. But there's no concept of planned halala that is there, which takes place in certain parts of the community, sister. Hope that answers the question.
I have a question related to divorce. In chapter number 65, Surah Talaq, in the first verse, Allah SWT says, divorce them at their prescribed periods. So this period of iddat, what should be the relationship between the husband and wife during the iddat period? Because they have to stay in their house or something. There are different fiqhi rulings accordingly. But what can be the relationship? How can they, is it legal, or they have to maintain the hijab level which is prescribed for all the general men?
Sister, the question as Surah Talaq chapter 65 verse number 1 onwards, it speaks about talaq, that divorce them in the prescribed period. There are various commentaries given, and you ask that what should be the state, etc. As far as, if you read the hadith, there are various hadiths which say that when you divorce your wife, they should not be having the menstrual cycles. And the hikmah, the wisdom behind this is that normally during menstrual cycle, the intimate relationship is not permitted. So this should not be one of the reasons we should initiate the divorce. Therefore, you should not divorce, the husband should not divorce the wife during the menstrual cycle. So it means that in the prescribed period, means when she is not undergoing the menstrual cycle, you are permitted. During menstrual cycle, it is prohibited. And furthermore, in the iddah period, you should keep your wife the way she is kept before you give the divorce. For example, the iddah period of 3 monthly periods. In the iddah period, you should not unnecessarily give her certain pains or certain trouble which she is not used to. So in the period of iddah, that's for 3 menstrual cycles, she should have the same luxury that she had during a normal course of time before the divorce was given. The facilities should be the same, so that should not be an initiation factor for the divorce to continue. So it means prescribed period means she should not be in the menstrual cycle, and the facility in the iddah period, but natural, she should not have a close relationship with the husband, so that you realize that it's more of a trial period, I call it, or a prelims that fine. We realize many a time that in anger a person gives divorce which is not allowed to give in anger. He gives divorce in anger and he realizes, okay, within a couple of days, I can't stay with my wife. So during that period, the husband can take back his wife to ruju. So therefore this trial period is their sister. So therefore in the trial period, they cannot have the intimate relationship of husband and wife, but the remaining facilities remain the same sister. Hope that answers the question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sister.
Normally we find that people have a blind following of the school of thoughts. They either follow one or the other, and they want the other person also to do that. In case a girl confronts a situation wherein the boy is rigid about one particular school of thought, or he belongs to an institute and he strictly, wants to follow their guidelines or whatever, should a girl go in for that?
Sister asks the question that some people follow strictly a school of thought, and many a time when you choose a life partner, the boy that she is supposed to marry may be following one of these school of thought, maybe belonging to an institution which is strict. So should she go into the marriage? Sister, you should see how strict is he. If he belongs to a school of thought which is against the Quran and Sunnah, and he says, oh, this is right just because this scholar says, then he is not following Quran and Sunnah. Because you should follow the school of thought only of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The madhab of the Rasul is what you follow. And if he is strict about one school of thought, or if he just belongs to a particular school of thought, then if you're able to convince him that, see, all the 4 Aimmas, whether it be Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Malik, all the 4 Aimmas said that if you find my fatwa, which goes against Allah and the Rasul, throw my fatwa on the wall. It means that all these Aimmas, these great scholars, they encouraged following Quran and the Sunnah. So if you're able to convince him and make him follow the true teachings of Quran and Sunnah, there's no problem. But if you feel he's rigid and he doesn't want to change, etc., then there may be problems. Then you have to see how rigid is he. And which school of thought does he belong to? Does he belong to a school of thought which is close to Quran and Sunnah, or a school of thought which is far away from Quran and Sunnah? So if he belongs to a school of thought which is far from Quran and Sunnah, and only in terms of rituals they are close to Islam, otherwise in practice they are far away from Quran and Sahih Hadith, then that person may not be very virtuous. So in that case, either you convince him to follow Quran and Sunnah, or you search for a person who is on the line of Quran and Sunnah, sister. Hope that answers the question. And now the time is running short, and we have to end this session of the telephone calls. And I would like to thank the sisters who asked the questions, and I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may He reward all the sisters. And we come at the end of the session. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.